Eddie.
Let's do it.
Fantastic. So, Leonie, thank you so much for coming through today and gracing us with your presence. I honestly say that, and I mean that because I think there's something about you that's quite special. I don't know what it is yet. I'm trying to figure it out myself, but I know there is something special. And you being a dietitian, I think that is something that we need. You know, I'm a biokineticist, and I think we need to work together. And I thought, you know what, why not have this conversation between a bio and a dietitian? So thank you so much for coming through today.
It's a pleasure.
Fantastic. So let's kick things off nice and simple. What made you decide to become a dietitian? What is the revelation or the points of inspiration, if there was anything like that? How did that come about for you?
So, actually, funny story. So, I always wanted to do something in health science, and my first thing was actually I wanted to become a doctor, right?
Okay.
Because that's every child's dream, right? And when I applied, obviously I didn't get in. So I was like, I definitely know I wanted to help people. So I wanted to stay in the health profession. So I went through the list and I was like, no, okay, I don't want to be physio, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that. And then eventually I came to dietitian and I was like, you know what? This is actually quite interesting because when I was younger, my parents always said I was the weird child. I was always looking at the back of like the cereal boxes and like reading the nutritional table. So they said, why not? You know, like try it out and see if you like it. And so I did the half year conversion because I started out with that BSc, general BSc.
Yes.
Then I went into dietetics after that. And I was like, you know what, this is actually something I enjoy. And then, and I went from there. And then I was like, you know what, I actually enjoy this. And then here I am.
Fantastic. Yeah. And I'm glad that you do enjoy it, because I've actually come across a few dietitians who, you know, they're doing it because it's a profession. They're doing it because it's a job. One thing with you, however, I've noticed and I've felt you love what you do and you love making a change. Where did that come from? Where was this desire to make a change? Did you always have this desire to make a change? Did you always have the desire to wanting to help? Where did that come from for you?
So not a lot of people know this. So I went through a lot of like hardship growing up, medical wise. So I have a lot of like medical things wrong with me, if I can put it that way. And like I always appreciated the health professionals that got me to where I am. So like, cause my health is like stable now. So that's what made me passionate. And I was always so grateful. And I thought, you know what, if I can make other people feel what I feel, then that would be awesome. You know, make them happy, make them feel like, you know, they've achieved something, you know, then I feel like I did my job, and that would be awesome.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's so true for me as well. I think that's one of the reasons why I got into what I'm doing today, because I actually went to a bio, and it also helped that she was female at the time. And I thought, you know, and she helped me. I broke my leg, she helped me, I felt good, and I thought, you know what, this is something worth doing. And I haven't looked back ever since. It's been an amazing journey. And so I thought, you know what, because you're a dietitian and you know, you're quite well versed in food and so many other factors, I thought, let's speak about the power of food, the importance of food. When did you realize the importance or the profoundness of food? If you have come across anything like that, is that such a thing for you?
So when I like really noticed it was probably like in my 4th year, when we actually started doing practicals and actually going into the hospitals and seeing patients. Because, and also obviously afterwards, when you really see people, because then you can see the progress, you can see the change, you can see them improving based on what you give them. So that's when you realize, you know what I'm doing is actually helping. Like one incident, and it made me like so proud of what I did, was when I actually did my community service. I had this one patient who had cancer, he had throat cancer. So he had a nose tube, and he was being fed through that way. And I managed to keep him alive for 3 months after that. Sure. And but unfortunately, when I was hospitalized myself, some of the nurses didn't check that he was getting his feeds, and he passed away. But I was just so proud of myself that I managed to keep him alive still. And he also appreciated and voiced it to me that he was so appreciated that I always took such care of him and always made sure that he got his feeds. So it made me feel good, and that's why I was like, you know what we do is necessary, and we do have our place, because not a lot of people actually respect what dietitians do, but I feel like the new generation actually does realize it more. So I'm really, that's where I've noticed it.
That is so powerful and so true. You know, I've heard and I've seen people who don't appreciate the profession, you know, they overlook it. And I'm not too sure why, because we all know that food is such an important part in, if we don't have food, we're not going to survive for much longer. And so I think, you know, it's such a, I don't even know where and why this whole thing has come about. I'm curious now. Why do you think that is? Why do you think dietitians have this, there's a perspective or perception out there that you guys are not as important? So what is there anything that comes up for you? Like, what's the reason?
So number one, now that I think about it, a lot of people just use Google. That's the first thing. You've got all types of people giving all types of advice. And also the older generation, they have their own perception and their own advice, but it's way too general. They give the same advice for every person. But the thing is, with dietitians, we give very specific advice, because each individual is very unique. So, and that's the thing, they don't realize, you know, that's where we do become very important. But it's really awesome that the new generation does realize this, and that's why we appreciate them, because they really do help us to, you know, get those people where they have to be. And that's what we actually promote, a holistic approach to everything. And that's why we also include you biokinetists, the physios, every other allied profession, because together we can all make a change for the individual, for them to, you know, be a healthier version of themselves.
You know, what comes to my mind and what I feel so strongly about is the need for us as professionals to come together, to realize that we can't do this thing alone. Leonie, I must be honest, you are one of the few people who have come to us in a way that you have, in the manner that you have, in all your glory, and you made it known about what you do and what you can offer. I've never really had the sense, up until you came, that we can do so much better when we're together, that we can offer our clients and patients so much more when we have this multidisciplinary approach. It's been taught to us in varsity. We understand that we have to have this multidisciplinary approach, but more than ever, for some reason, I felt it more just meeting you, and I don't know why. I don't know why that it had to take you to come in for me to experience that. But I see it, and I recognize it, and I'm definitely such a big advocate for it. You know, we don't know everything, and so we need a helping hand, which I think is so important. Now, you said something very interesting, and I'm not sure if you realize that. You said one of the reasons why people, firstly, you've mentioned that you're quite specific in the way that you would administer or assess and administer your prescription of certain foods and so forth, eating plans and so forth. And you mentioned the social aspect. That's quite interesting. Why is it? How would someone's social aspects of their life determine what they would eat? What's the reason for you accounting their social aspect?
So obviously with social, there's also different aspects that play a part. So it includes like your family background, it includes the social economic part, it includes literally so many other things that could influence, like even your friends that you're around. So if you look at all of those things, honestly, like for example, let's take the social economic status. For them, they'll go for the cheaper, unhealthy things instead of the healthy, more expensive things. Or if you were brought up in a family where you ate like a lot of creamy pastas and whatever, you know, that's what you know, that's what you'll buy. Or if you guys are used to having convenience foods, that's what they'll buy. So that's how the social stuff does play a role. So that's why you have to literally consider those things too.
Okay, I mean, that makes perfect sense now. And so what sort of approach do you use when you come across your clients? Do you sort of meet them where they're at and work around what they have? Or do you say, no, this is what you need to do, and sort of get them to do this 360 change in their lifestyle and eating?
So I actually have a perfect example for that. So I have now, for like the past 2 weeks or so, I've had 2 creches that contacted me to do their menu, and it's low income creches. So they get funded from the government, but they only get a specific amount. So they do rely on the very cheap items, and that does include like your instant porridge, pap, and all of those things. So in that instant, what we do, we, number one, tell them how to prepare those things in a healthy way, what not to add, like, because sometimes they'll add like butter or like full cream milk and those types of things. So we teach them how to substitute things or how to make it a little bit healthier. And then also how to use different versions of it. So say, for example, they put bread in the menu, then we'll be like, okay, don't use the white bread, rather use the whole wheat bread. Or like we either also check the portion sizes, because maybe the kids are having too much, so then we prevent them from having, being obese at the end. Or, we look at it in different ways. We also check to see if there's like refined sugars that they're getting, because a lot of the times I've also noticed they give like fruit juice a lot, and even sweets and chips, which we also then try to tell them rather give them an alternative snack rather than the chips. And then what I do is I go through the different shops, and then I even give them examples of what shops have that item at the cheapest price, so that we still stay within budget. So I definitely make sure that you don't exceed it, even because, like I say, which is so weird in our society today, that the healthy stuff is more expensive. We do have to still accommodate that they can have their normal stuff, but we do tell them to prepare it and put extra stuff in that doesn't make it unhealthy.
Again, I think that's so important, and I think not just for I think it's important for everyone to know that you start with the lowest hanging fruits, and start with what you can change. And if it is cutting down your sugar from 3 teaspoons to 1 teaspoon or 2 teaspoons, but start somewhere. You don't have to completely change your eating habits, but just chipping away each time. And I say that because I was guilty of doing the opposite. I would think, if I'm not changing it completely, then what's the point? Am I actually going to see a difference? But you actually will see a difference, and you will feel a difference just by making those small changes. So I strongly believe, and I strongly advocate, that start at the lowest hanging fruits. If it's portion size, just cut down on that. If it's just cutting down on your sugar intake by 2 teaspoons or whatever it is, but starting somewhere, and I absolutely love that. Would you, with people trying to modify certain things, what approach, what exactly would you get them to do? What's the first thing that you would normally get your clients to do? Would it be portion control? Would it be limiting a certain thing? Or is it also very specific to what they're coming to you with? What's your go-to?
Okay, so the first thing I do look at is their diagnosis, because that will depict the menu that you plan for them. So a lot of the times when you do get, for example, I get a lot of chronic patients. So and a lot of the times with the chronic that they have, they are most of the time overweight, and that does play a big part with the chronic disease that they have. So first I obviously tackle how to treat the chronic disease, and then we look at how to control the weight that they're at. And then I calculate the total calories, and then I distribute it between the different food groups. And then I make sure that it's calculated according to weight loss, so that those portion sizes that I give will definitely help them to get towards a weight loss goal. So as long as they stay within that portion size, they won't gain weight, they'll actually lose. But then it's also very important to remember that they do have to exercise, because weight loss depends on 70% diet and 30% exercise. So if they do that exercise, it actually helps to definitely succeed in the weight loss process.
I agree. So tell me, it sounds as if you use the calorie counting approach, or maybe I'm incorrect. So I actually had a bodybuilder on the podcast, and he's also very big on calorie counting your calories. I know with certain people it becomes like this obsession, you know, and people go real deep, and you know, it becomes like this, almost this. It's an obsession, but it becomes crippling to some people. Do you use the calorie counting approach? And if you do, how do you go about doing it?
So I actually use just like portion size. And when I say portion size, I mean when I write it out on the meal plan, I only use like cups or teaspoons or anything like that. I don't say grams or milligrams or whatever the case.
Interesting.
Because number one, you can't go to a restaurant and have your scale with you and measure it out. That would just be ridiculous. So like when you're at home, it just makes it so much easier. I mean, obviously, say for example, a person doesn't have a scale. It's so much easier just to be like, oh, she said I can have a teaspoon, and then, you know, you serve that up. So that's what I use. And that literally also, you'll still stay within the portion sizes as long as you use those metrics that I put in there. So that's why I don't necessarily promote the actual like calorie counting to the T, like grams and whatever, or milliliters, because then, like you say, people do become obsessed, and that's where it becomes dangerous. So yeah, I don't completely agree with the calorie counting, but like I say, I do make sure that with the portion sizes, it stays within their calories. With
you. And so you mentioned that a lot of your clients, usually based on their chronic conditions, are usually overweight. Now, fat loss is a big thing. You know, if you can create a supplement or this or that to get you to lose weight, you know, we'll be millionaires. So that's a big thing for a lot of people. What approach, or what approach would you say do you use in terms of weight loss? Maybe let's take it a step back. What's the mechanism for weight loss? Like, how do people actually lose weight? Because there's a lot of information out there on how to lose weight, and a lot of people have different variations to answer the question. But from a dietitian's point of view, how does one lose weight?
So again, I'm going to use the word holistic, because it's not just one aspect. So because there are so many fat diets out there that tell you, okay, this is bad, you have to do that, you must leave this out, or whatever. But with us dietitians, we believe in including everything, but you do everything in a healthy way. So for example, let's use carbs as an example. You can still have carbs, but have the right type of carbs. And also then just have the right portions of the carbs, and then prepare the carbs in a correct way. Same with proteins. If you have proteins, make sure it's a lean protein. Make sure you take the fat off the protein. And then also with your fat, make sure it's your good fat instead of the bad fat. Then again, you literally just have to make sure you prepare it correctly. So that's the thing. For me, it's, and most, like I say, most dietitians, it's the entire approach. It's not just you have to cut things out. Okay. Like I say, it's portion size, it's the way you cook, it's if you add stuff to it. Like again, let's use like the meat. If you add like a mushroom sauce on there, again, you're making it unhealthy. So it's, you have to literally just make sure you understand what is healthy and what is not. And that's what we do. We literally go into detail, but we don't go excessive in that way that it makes the client confused. We just literally try to zone in on the important stuff, that they realize that this is what they need to limit and this is what they need to concentrate on. But we don't want to limit them so much that it becomes monotonous and almost boring, that they don't want to carry on with it. We still try to include and make their life interesting, their meals still enjoyable, and the entire process, we don't want it to be that it almost feels like they don't want to see a dietitian at all, you know, because otherwise, why? Like, why do it? If you, like, for example, I had a client who said he had been to another dietitian, and she said that they should just eat avo and egg in the morning for breakfast. So that's the thing. You don't want to scare people off and, you know, make them, restrict them from everything and, you know, give them a silly diet. So you have to be very careful with how you approach it.
Very interesting. And so I'm going to play a bit of devil's advocate. So let's say you get a client come in who is a firm believer in a ketogenic diet. Firstly, I'm not even sure what your thoughts on ketogenic diets, but let's say this is what they prefer. Would you work with them with this ketogenic diet, or would you say, nope, keto is not good, this is what you should be doing, go more a holistic approach? What would you say?
So I never turn clients away based on the type of diet they want to follow. How I usually approach it, number one, I tell them the risks and the research and the evidence behind it so that they know what they're getting themselves into. And if they then still decide they want to go ahead, then I say, okay, so this is how we're going to do it. And then I still lay everything out for them, and then they can carry on, and we then just monitor. And then afterwards, if they still want to carry on, then we carry on with it. So that's what I do.
Is the ketogenic diet a good diet to follow?
So, you know, there's pros and cons, but obviously you do want to include other food groups as well. You don't want to just favor one more the other. So obviously with the ketogenic diet, you prefer the meat and the fats and those types of things. But you need your stuff like your carbs and to give you energy. And believe it or not, your brain actually thrives off carbs. It needs carbs to function. And if you limit that, you're going to be tired most of the day. You will be able to not do what you usually do at your optimal level. And that's why I don't usually promote it. And yeah, like that's the biggest reason why I say you should rather go for a diet that includes most of your healthy things than rather just focus on one food group. So
about 3-4 years ago, I became vegan.
I'm talking to the wrong person.
But I'm no longer vegan, I'll tell you that. And what happened was, initially I lost weight, I felt good, my energy was decent, and then I plateaued, and then I went downhill. Like I started getting sick, I started feeling lethargic, fatigued, brain fog, less clarity of thought, and I was like, no man, this is not like it. Like what's going on here? And I stopped. And for me, and I know there's a lot of vegan people out there, but for me, it wasn't worth it. Now, based on your knowledge and your background, is vegan a sustainable way of life? I think that people tend to, I don't know why, there's this innate tendency for us to go to the extremes. There's a diet, the carnivore diet. There's another diet that's such a big diet. There's a guy by the name of Jordan Peterson. I'm not too sure if you're familiar with him. He's a professor in the US, very well-known guy. He swears by the carnivore diet. He says it has rid him of a lot of ailments that he had, mental being quite a big one for him. He suffered from a lot of mental illness. And also, there's another particular illness, but I don't want to say it because I'm not entirely sure, but he said it helped him significantly. I want to say MS, but I'm not entirely sure. But he said it got rid of all of his symptoms of it, just following a carnivore diet. And he's been doing it for years. Again, is it, and this is what I'm trying to think, is when we follow a extreme diet like veganism and the carnivore diet, is there a positive effect because we're actually cutting out all the gunk, all the crappy stuff, and that's why we're getting healthier? Or is it that the foods that we're actually eating is nourishing our body to the point where we're actually healing ourselves. Because I have this inkling that we're actually just getting rid of all the gunk, and that's why our bodies are healing naturally. And that's why fasting is such a big thing. You know, there's so much research showing that fasting is beneficial to the body, but how much fasting, you know, and then there's that sort of dance between the two. So I guess the question is, should you, if you don't mind speaking on the carnivore diet, like what approach would you use for that?
So, to be very honest, I didn't find a lot of research on the carnivore diet. But the thing is, I think it's has affected only like a certain group of people, and because of that, you can't make a conclusive like assumption that it is very healthy or whatever. Like with this guy who wrote that book or made this assumption now, he was probably one of the few people that it like did that for. And this, I know we spoke about this before, I did bring it up, like how people's DNA plays a big role in how you are affected by different food groups or different things. And maybe his DNA is what actually benefited from that. The same with the intermittent fasting is also that aspect. If your DNA allows it, you will perform better by actually following it. But for someone whose DNA doesn't complement, for example, the carnivore diet, I wouldn't necessarily say it's the best. But I do see the logic behind it. I kind of get why he says it's the best, because we are cutting out the gunk if you think about it. And we're going back to the natural. But I think he is emphasizing more just like the meat and stuff. Where I think you still have to include your vegetables and those types of things. Because if you think about it, even that, if you date back, your ancestors, I mean, how did we find out about the plants? It's because of our ancestors. They started experimenting, I mean, because they couldn't just survive on meat alone. And that's where we get a lot of our like vitamins and minerals, our antioxidants, phytochemicals, fiber, and all of that from. So without those things, our bodies wouldn't be as healthy. So that's why I still believe that we do need, like I say, those things as well. We can't just depend on one food group alone. So there's, like I say, it's a catch-22. So with him, I wouldn't necessarily say that it's just that it will work for everyone.
Yeah.
I think he was the exception. That's why it worked for him.
You mentioned something about DNA, and I think that's so important. Your DNA makeup will, predispose you to certain things, and as a result, you'll benefit from certain eating plans more than others. And I think that's what needs to be said more, because with these fad diets coming out, it's a craze and everyone jumps in these trends, and some people get sick by it, some people benefit from it, and then if someone benefits from it, just that one person benefits, and sort of that story gets told more than the person who doesn't benefit from it. And I think we have to emphasize the importance of being specific, that your DNA might not be conducive to you eating certain types of foods, which sort of brings me to blood types. Now, as you know, there's a lot of people raving about eating according to your blood type. Let's tackle this. Is there truth to it? And what should people be thinking in terms of their blood type?
So many people have asked me about this. So again, there is not a lot of research or a lot of evidence, should I say, about the blood type diets and stuff. So the reason we don't necessarily promote it is because if you look at it this way, say you are type A and I'm type A, your gender is different to mine, your background is different to mine, your hormones are different to mine. So I'm not going to prescribe the same diet to you, the same to me. It doesn't mean you're going to be affected to certain foods the same way I'm going to be affected to foods. So you can't make that conclusion based on that diet. So it's, like I say, that's why we don't usually promote it, because again, there's not a lot of evidence. It was, if you look at the research, I actually looked through it myself. It was one guy who wrote a book about it, and everyone followed suit. And and you know how the Americans are, they love spreading these things. So yeah, like it was one guy who wrote a book and everyone started going on it. And yeah, so like I say, it's just, one has to be careful, because people don't do the research. They just see these things and then all of a sudden, this is what they have to do.
Yes.
Afterwards, they don't realize, it actually doesn't work. And also what I found, and that's what people don't realize, the advice, and you must actually do the research yourself, the advice that they give between the different food groups is actually so general. It's almost like, like obviously they basically give you general health advice that you can't even say it's specific to a food, to a blood type. So that's why you're just like, why even? You don't have to do it. So.
And I'm thinking about, what comes up for me is, if you have the means, definitely get a genetic test done to see exactly where you're at. However, not everyone has the luxury of getting a genetic test. Is there anything that you've picked up or that the research has shown that could kind of guide your clients into a way of eating? For example, has the science shown that a particular type of race, a particular type of person coming from a particular type of country, so people from Europe, they tend to eat certain things, is there a bit of truth to that? Like, I'm trying to figure out ways in which we could sort of hack the system without actually getting a genetic test done. Is there such a thing like that?
Yeah, so obviously these genetic tests cost a fortune. So what I usually do, and that's where we do, the first consult is literally where we go through everything. We get the background and whatever. And one of my questions are like, what have you done in the past with regards to, what have you tried for weight loss, or what have you tried for this specific disease that you have? Have you been following any diets, or have you seen a dietitian before? And what did they do with you? It's to see, like, have they tried it and was it successful? Because in that way, I can already narrow down to what have they tried and let me try something else. So for example, if they tried the fasting and it didn't work, then I already know that's not what their DNA is, complementing. So then we try something else. But the one I usually always go to is, I include everything. I do the general healthy thing. And then afterwards I see. That's why I do a feedback session after 2 weeks. And that's where they give me feedback. I go, okay, did it work? I evaluate their readings again, like did they lose weight? Did the fat percentage go down? And then we actually see, like, okay, is there something else we can change? And that's how I do it. It's a trial and error in the end. Because again, like we say, you can't actually depict, is this, that, whatever. So in the end, you kind of just have to go with your gut. But I do also, in the end, when I do realize, for example, a patient isn't losing weight, a nice thing you can do, you can go for blood tests just to check if there's maybe something else that's preventing them from losing weight, or if there's something else contributing to their lack of health. So that's one way to go about it.
Absolutely. And I think this is quite an important point, is if you don't have the luxury of going for the test, be an experimenter. Experiment, see what foods do well with you, notice what happens to your body when you eat certain types of food groups, and become more aware. And I think that's what's lacking today. And if I'm being honest, I think a lot of people are unaware of what certain foods do to their body. Are you low energy when you eat this particular type of food? Do you notice an increase in energy with this type of food? But become aware and experiment. You don't have to follow a specific diet. If it's not working, by all means, change it up. Go into something that does work, but experiment, explore, be more adventurous. And I think people are very fearful. And also, it takes a bit of work. And I think that's what it comes down to. It takes work to explore. It takes work to figure out. It also takes a lot of education. And some people are not willing to educate themselves.
Yeah.
And so...
It's because they're scared of what they'll find. Exactly. Yeah.
You're absolutely right. And that's what I've noticed in my practice is education is one of the factors that I focus on to help for the person to heal in a particular way. Without education, I've noticed that the job is only halfway done. Because if you as a client do not understand why I'm doing certain things, it just doesn't work the same. And I don't know why. I'm not too sure why it is that way. I thought, if I tell you what to do, just do it and you should be okay. But it doesn't happen that way. It's important that your client understands why you're doing it. And it's almost like they have the conviction, and the minute they believe it, it actually works a lot better. And so I completely agree. I think we need to educate more and educate yourself on certain stuff. Don't just accept fad diets. Do the research, and even if if the research backs it up, be open to knowing that it might not be the full truth, but experiment. And that's exactly what I've done, and I am still doing, and I think we all will continue to do it. You're never at a particular point where you know everything, but experiment, which I think is so important. So I'm loving what we're discussing, because I think this is so important, and I think people are getting it. Well, I'm getting it. I'll tell you that. People have always said, be holistic. People have always said, go more, not general, but be more grounded in your approach. Don't cut out foods completely, just have more of a holistic approach. And I think that's the message that's been portrayed here today. And I do think that it's actually a better message than just focusing on a specific thing, because people want a quick fix.
Unfortunately.
People want a quick fix. Now, you've mentioned that you treat a lot of chronic conditions. Is there, and I know each individual is different, and you have to cater for their specific needs. Is there a specific, let's take a condition, cholesterol. Is there a specific thing that you would recommend for people who have high cholesterol to do or be more mindful of? Is there a trend that you've noticed with people that come to you that have high cholesterol? What may that look like?
So with cholesterol, we notice that we look at what they eat first. And obviously what I've noticed is that they have a diet that's very high in fat, but that's just because of lack of education. And but also, do you know that sometimes we have to consider if it's hereditary? I mean, I'll take myself as an example. We actually have high cholesterol in the family, and my cholesterol is actually quite high. So for me, unfortunately, my cholesterol will always be at a range of the normal, but I can always control it to be a little bit lower. Then I just have to make sure I eat the right fats. So that's the thing. We just always make sure we teach them which fats they can have compared to the bad fats. But you have to look and see, are they, number one, overweight? Like I said, then you have to see, is it in the family? And then, like I say, lastly, what they eat and stuff. So that's usually how I approach it, should I say. And then afterwards, I do make the meal plan a low-fat diet. But then the fat that I do include is the healthy fats. And then obviously those fats then also is either what they eat or what they then use to cook. Because a lot of them actually don't know which fats are good and bad. Like I've noticed, one of the biggest trends now is the coconut oil, or anything coconut, should I say. And the thing is that they don't know that it's high in cholesterol or saturated fat, should I say. So it's things like that, and that's where I come in. That's where any dietitian comes in. We educate on that, and like you say, it's so important because people don't know. And do you know how many times people are like, what? I didn't know that, and then you're like, yeah. So it's so like important to have them actually ask questions and have them open up to you, because then we can at least be like, okay, no, look, let's talk about this. Let's just make sure you are doing it the right way. And then give them the right advice on how to make it healthy. So that's how I go.
Let's actually debunk a bit of myths, because it's all about education. So you mentioned...
Wait, first, did I answer that right?
You did.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure.
You did.
Okay.
You did. You definitely did.
I always doubt myself.
So would you... You mentioned coconut oil. And there's a massive craze, and then you get the almond milk and the rice milk and all that sort of thing. Let's speak about butter, pure organic butter.
Okay.
What's your take on that? Is it a big thing? Is it a good thing? Should people include that into their diet? Should they not?
Okay, so obviously again you have to look and see, do they have a chronic disease, so heart disease or anything like that, or are they overweight or whatever. If you are a healthy individual, I would obviously not say, here, have the whole slab of butter. I would say, let's limit it, and I wouldn't say necessarily go and prepare all of your meals with butter. Reason being, if you heat butter, it actually has a certain heating point where it starts to become toxic. So that's why we don't say use butter most of the time for cooking and stuff. If you want to put a little bit on your bread, something like that is fine. But again, like I say, we then give you portion sizes or the amounts you should use per day. But like I say, I would only always recommend it for, not recommend it, but what I say, to be to a healthy person. If they really ask me, please, can I have butter? I'll be like, okay, you can, but let's just look at how much you should have. But I would never recommend it for someone who does have a history of heart disease. That's where we start to contemplate, no, let's rather do other alternatives.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And let's speak about cooking oils. Your canolas and your sunflower oils. Yay or nay? Is it good or is it bad?
It's definitely not bad, but it's obviously the better version. It's healthier because you've got your omegas and stuff. But look, unfortunately, you have that heating point still.
Okay.
But it's just, if you use a little bit, again, it's not the end of the world. If you start deep frying stuff, of course it becomes a questionable thing. But if you just do a little bit of shallow frying, it's not the end of the world. It's for us, it still doesn't affect your body as much as butter and stuff does.
Perfect.
So yeah.
A lot of people mentioned that you should substitute your oils with olive oil. Is olive oil a better oil when it comes to cooking? I know the Italians also, they're very big on olive oil is only meant for salad dressing. They're very big on that. They don't believe you should cook with olive oil, but is that a bit alternative in replacement of your canola oils or your sunflower oils? So
actually, the one that we recommend is actually canola oil and olive oil.
Okay.
Over sunflower oil. So there's not necessarily something that's super more healthier about it. But again, for me, it's not the biggest deal. I don't make a big fuss about what type of oils. There I just give my clients the prerogative, but on my meal plan, I usually always say canola oil or olive oil. But when it comes to cooking, I usually say canola oil. But by all means, if people want to use the olive oil as a dressing, if it's just a little bit or within my portion sizes, they can use it. But like I say, that's why the portion sizes become so important. If they stick with those, it's not a problem. They can use whichever one.
With you.
Yeah.
And let's go to dairy. Should we... Firstly, is dairy, is it a good thing? The advertisements say that, particularly with milk, that milk is good for bone health and so forth. Do you advocate milk? Do you tell people to reduce their milk intake? What's your take on that?
So for me, milk is still important. Obviously, it's an animal product, so it still has saturated fat in it. So the thing I'd concentrate on for any client of mine, if it's weight loss or chronic, I just tell them to use either low fat or fat free, because there isn't a difference in your carb and your protein within any of the milks. It's just the fat content that changes. So you'll still get the other nutrients, it's just the fat that you'll have less of. So for me, I still promote milk or yogurt or anything like that that has the dairy in it. So for me, it's a bad thing, because I still promote that, because you need it for calcium and bone health, especially before the age of 30, because that's when you're still building your bone density. By the age of 30, that's unfortunately when it starts declining and you actually can't, your body doesn't, build that density anymore. So you still need that bit of dairy before then. So yeah.
I was told once that using full cream milk is actually better compared to low fat or fat-free milk.
So that type of evidence, from what I know, is more important for children between the ages of 1 to 5. Reason being is because they still need to develop some fat stores, which is important for warmth, subcutaneous fat. Obviously not obese. I'm not talking obese now. But because your body does need fat to protect your organs and those types of things. So kids still need it in the beginning. But it's not necessarily super important for adulthood. So just out of my opinion, my point of view, I don't necessarily promote you have to have full cream milk. I usually stick to the low fat. Because for me, it's a happy medium. It's right there in the middle.
With you.
So just like I say, personal opinion, I don't say you have to have the full cream milk. It's for me more important for the little kids, just because they're still in the developmental stage. So that's why it's for me not that important for adults.
Perfect. Is there anything that you think there's a misconception about when it comes to people and assuming that certain foods are healthy when they're actually not healthy? It could be potatoes, it could be whatever. Have you noticed, is there anything that you've come across where your clients assume that certain foods are healthy when they're actually not that healthy, that we haven't spoken about yet?
So we have touched obviously on the eating, for example, banting. So I get a lot of questions about those types of things. It's not that my clients follow it, but they're almost questioning it because they're quite intrigued in maybe following it.
Okay.
So they ask then, is eating a lot of fatty foods very important, or does it help, or is it better over cutting out carbs? So that's, for me, is a very popular question. Are carbs really bad, and are fats really good? So for me, it's actually the opposite. Carbs, you can still control and still burn the energy you get from the carbs. And by doing your cardio, by doing your exercise, you're still burning them. Fat, you can only start burning once you've depleted your carbs. Your body only starts burning your fat. So that's why, like I said, the carbs are still necessary. You need it for fiber. It's still there for a reason. And your body thrives on it. So the fat, and like I say, especially the fat that, for example, the banting promotes, is all of the saturated fats. And that's what causes the heart diseases later in life and stuff. It's just not maintainable. It's just the thing also with banting, or any type of diet where you just concentrate on one food group. If you eventually change back to your old ways and all of a sudden include carbs again, your body immediately stores it as fat. So a lot of clients, like I say, you'll see in the research, they have enormous weight loss in the beginning, but then they gain back double from what they lost when they start introducing back carbs and stuff. So the thing is, carbs aren't bad. It's just the type of carbs you eat and the portion sizes that you have. And then, like I say, with fat, the same thing there. You have to make sure you have the right fats and also in the same amounts. I wouldn't necessarily, you can't say cut all fats out completely. Like, if you want to have that steak with that little bit of fat on there, fine, by all means. If it happens once a week, that's fine. Like, I won't condemn you for that. But for someone who's seriously ill, I wouldn't recommend you having it too often. But everything in moderation, you know, that's what I promote. So yeah, that's what I think.
Fantastic. Now, let's speak about alcohol.
Topic of the day.
No. So intuitively, we all know that alcohol is not the greatest for the body, but people get away with, no, but wine is good for you. Wine is good for the heart, they say, and particularly red wine. Let's be more general for now. Is alcohol good for you? And then we'll speak about the red wine as well.
Okay, so alcohol, number one, has calories in it, full stop. Number two, it decreases your metabolism. So you're now consuming the calories and decreasing your metabolism. So the first thing it does, it's storing everything. So that's number one, what the problem is with alcohol. And then obviously number two, the more you have, the worse it gets. And obviously once you've had one, people just carry on consuming. But it also depends on the different types of alcohols you have. Some are more calorie dense, like your beer and stuff. That's just because of the fermentation process and the yeast and all of that in it. The ones, and another one that's also quite bad is like the ones that are creamy, like your amarulas and those types of things.
Okay.
So you definitely have to concentrate on the different types and what they have in them. The ones that are a little bit better that you can put there is like your clear spirits, and then we can get to the wine. But I can tell you, out of all of the alcohols, the one that is considered to be lower in calories is champagne. But I'm not talking JC LaRue because that's like more sweetened sparkly wine. We're talking like the proper like brut stuff, because that doesn't have like the added sugars and flavoring and all of that in there. Those have the lesser calories in them.
Yeah.
Wine, unfortunately, is still high in calories. But the reason, now that we can get to the wine, the reason they all preaching about red wine specifically is because of the antioxidants that you get in there. But now the thing is, there has been research done actually, and the reason they did it was because in Europe, they were always like, why are these Italians and all of them always so skinny and they eat so many pastries and, you know, so many carbs? And then they did a little bit of research behind it, and then they realized that having 1 glass of wine per day actually helped to decrease heart disease and, you know, those types of things. But now I emphasize, 1 glass of wine is only 175 milliliters.
Okay.
If you exceed that, again, it becomes a catch-22. And the problem is people love doing this. They're like, 1 glass, and then it's a huge little glass like this. So that's the thing, people abuse the thing. And then also, like I say, it's specifically that amount, once a day. Immediately, if you do every second day or whatever, it cancels out.
Yeah.
So the research was specifically to that proved that point.
Yeah.
But again, that was just one study. It hasn't been proven in other studies yet.
With you.
But like I say, that they do, it's evident. There are antioxidants in there, but again, limitations, because it's still alcohol. It still has calories in it, so that's why you can't just be like, oh yeah, I can have as much as I want. So yeah.
Would you tell people, if you could tell people to cut it out completely, or do you actually recommend for them to consume a bit of alcohol, a moderate amount of alcohol in their eating plan?
No, I don't actually. If I have an overweight or obese patient, I tell them to cut it out completely. Because, like I say, it's very important just because of the metabolism. I want them to burn what they eat during the day. I don't want their metabolism to slow down. I want it to speed up so that we can speed up what they eat. We can then increase the weight loss process. So I actually, like I say, in the beginning, I limit it completely until we've gotten to a point where they've lost enough weight where I can say, okay, let's start becoming a little bit more lenient. Is that the word? Lenient?
Yes.
Yes, okay. We become a little bit more lenient, and we can maybe once a week include that 1 glass of alcohol. But like I say, it's very dependent on either the BMI or what the client came to me for.
Yeah.
So it just depends. But I usually always start off by letting them cut it out completely. And I always use my sister as an example. She cut it out completely when she went through her weight loss process, and she was obese. And she lost 20 kgs. It really helped a lot. And I mean, she swore by it that it definitely helped with that she cut out alcohol, because even prior, she tried other diets and stuff, and she still included the alcohol, and it didn't make a difference. She hit a plateau, she wasn't losing weight, and this definitely made a difference. It really, for me also, I preach that alcohol should definitely be cut out, especially in the beginning when you want to spark that weight loss.
Yes, I agree 100%. So we are unfortunately coming to a close, and usually at the end of these podcasts, I usually ask the people on here about their legacy, but I want to change it slightly. I want to ask you, what's the one message that you would leave with the audience? What's that one thing that you would, if you had a magic wand and you could just get that into their brains, what message would that be?
Well, that's a difficult question, actually. I'll get back to you in a week. All right, so I don't know. Goodness, what would I tell them? You caught me off guard.
Would it be living an holistic lifestyle? Would it be being in tune with your body? Would it be, what's the thing that helped you on your health journey that you think is a game changer for yourself? What's that one message that you think is worth sharing? And it might change.
Okay. Well, yeah. So again, yeah, like you say, it is actually the holistic approach. But for me, that's why people always laugh. My sister always laughs when I post on social media. I'm always like #healthy lifestyle, #healthy eating. But I actually mean those things. Like, it is about eating healthy and having a healthy lifestyle. And lifestyle is actually a very important word, because it includes your exercise. It includes smoking. That smoking also plays a big part in health and weight loss and just general health. So then alcohol also fits in there, social environment again. So literally, I just say that's literally what I would give people, is just to consider the entire thing, not just diet alone. Like, this is it, full stop. You have to literally commit to changing everything. Well, not changing it completely, but to just consider
everything.
Yeah, just to consider making a few alterations and just think a little bit more logic in how you can better yourself in that way. So that's how I would definitely start in that direction.
Fantastic. Leonie, thank you so much for coming through and spending time with us and sharing your words of wisdom. And I really do think that there was a message that came across quite beautifully, and that is live a holistic lifestyle. Include things that you wouldn't include, particularly with carbs. I think that carbs is a big thing for a lot of people. People would just exclude it, but include the good carbs. But live a balanced lifestyle. I think that's the message that came through quite beautifully. So thank you so much, and I do appreciate you coming through.
Thanks for having me.
It's only a pleasure.